Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In the last video, I've shown you how to use the positions property of CSS in order to uh, put partitions of your web page in the proper place. In this video, I'm going to use a different tool that is used also to locate partitions of your web page in, inside the viewport using a layout tool. This is called CSS grids. No? CSS grids are set using the display property. Remember earlier that I have described to you three different properties for display, such as inline, block, and inline block. Grid is the fourth property. A grid will allow you to partition your web page into columns and rows, like a table. However, unlike a table, the grid can have varying lengths in terms of columns and rows. No? In this example, I am going to partition the web page into 10 different columns and 10 different rows. How do I do that? Uh, Here is a sample grid. No? In order to uh, partition your container, okay, you'll have to assign it a property called a grid using this. You can also use an inline grid. After specifying the grid property, you then proceed to uh, defining the columns using the grid template columns property. Like in this case, I am defining 10 columns of 100 pixels each. If your columns have uniform width, you can use the repeat property, like repeat, okay, in this case, 10 times 100x, 100px. So this will shorten the declaration of the template columns. After defining the columns, you can also define the rows. In this case, I am defining 10 rows, each also of 100 pixels height. Like the template columns, you can also use the repeat property in order to repeat rows of the same height. And inside the HTML, I have defined 5 different divs, no, to be used for my left menu, okay, my header line, my right content, my main content, and my footer line. Here is how it looks in the plain form. Okay, so we have 5 different divs to be partitioned or to be laid out uh, in a 10 by 10 grid. Okay. So the first thing to do is to lay out our header line. Usually our header line is on the first row, occupying the whole row or all the columns of the row. So in order to do that, we will go into the properties of the header line and assign them the grid template columns and grid template rows. So how do we do that? We go to our header line and assign the grid row start and the grid row end. Okay. Grid row end, and we'll also have, of course, no, the grid column start. Sorry for that. Okay. The row start is at 1, no? So we'll be specified as 1. And we will, at this moment, let's assign it a column of 1 to 10. Okay, 1, column end of 10. Okay, and let's save this. So remember that we are trying to locate our header line on the top row. Okay, so by assigning it a row of 1 and a column of 1 to 10, let us try to refresh our file. Now, take note that our header line is now on the top row, but there it did not occupy the whole row. It seems that there's a 100 pixel cell which is left for the left menu, which means that only 900 pixels of the row were used by the header line. Why is that? When we are layouting using the grid the CSS grid, we have to remember that positioning is done in terms of a reference point, and the reference is always in a cell, in every cell. Whether we are starting or ending, the reference is always on the left side and on the top side. When we are referencing a column, the start or the end will be located with respect to the left side of the column. And when we are locating a row, the start or the end will be positioned according to the top side of the row. Like in this case, when we say grid column start of 1, the header line starts at the left side of column 1, which is in this part. Okay, it started at the left side. And when we say grid column end of 10, it will end at the left side of column 10, which in this case is this column, which means that actually only 9 columns are used, and the column 10 is not used by the header line because it ends with the left side of column 10. So how do we end the grid to the right side of column 10? Usually we will do that by using column 11. We don't have column 11 actually because we only have 10 columns. However, column 11, indicating column 11 will make the column end at the right side of column 10. So that's why we are forcing the issue by setting the column end at 11, although there's no column such as 11. So in this case, we are able to locate the header line to the top line, including rows 1 to 10, this time to the right side of row 10. Now, for the left menu, okay, let us locate it to the first two columns, okay, starting from the second row to the last row. This time we are going to use a shortcut. For example, for indicating the row, you just use grid dash row. Okay, we indicate the start row. So the start row is 2 and the ending row is 10. So that's what we do. The slash is a separator between the start and the end. And now we will have a grid column, same way. And we will start at column 1 and end at column 3. Okay, let's try to save this and see how it looks, how it affects our web page. Now look at that. We are able to put the left menu to the first two columns. And take note that it didn't occupy all of the rows in the sense that we have ended uh, it at column 10. When we say column 10, it is with respect to the rather row 10. You have ended it with row 10 and it will stop at the top of row 10. That's why it did not occupy row 10. So we will apply the same technique that we used in adjusting the right column of the header line. We will adjust the last row of our left menu by setting the row to row 11. Although there's no row 11, but by doing so, we are able to set the end to the bottom of row 10. Let us refresh that. So now it occupied all the rows, starting from row 2 to row 10. Now, let us try to find out how many columns are occupied by the left menu by setting our main content. We want our main content to stay at the side of left menu. We want them to be side by side. Okay. So for our main content, we'll apply the allocation close to the left menu. This time we are going to use uh, a different shortcut called the grid area. In the grid area, we are going to specify the upper left coordinate and the lower right coordinate. No? In this case, we would like our D4 to start at column 2, okay, and rather row 2, and start at column 4 because the D1s ended at column 3. We want them side by side. And we want the lower right to end at column 10 because we don't want the column 10 to be included, row 10 because we don't want row 10 to be included, and column 11 so that it no column 9 so that it will occupy that much space. Let's save that and let's try to refresh. Take note that there's a space between the left menu and the main content. That is because the left menu ended at column 3, particularly on the left side of column 3. And the menu and the main content ended with, rather started with column 4, particularly at the left side of column 4. So therefore, there's a space in between. So in order to remove that space, we will uh, start the coordinate of the main content at column 3. They will not overlap in the sense that the main content will start at the left end of column 3 and the left menu will end at the left end of column 3. So they will just be on the right spot. Okay, let's save this and then let's refresh. If you take note, we now have properly located the main content. Now the right content. Now how many rows are there? How many pixels are occupied by the left menu? Only 200 pixels wide. Okay, and the main content occupies 700 pixels because there's two more columns of 100 pixels each. So the next thing to do is to assign the right content. Okay, the right content is like the main content. Okay, so we will start at row 10. Okay, and start at column 9. Okay, and then we will end at row 10 and end at column 11. Okay, 11 so that it will end at the right end of column 10, although we know that there's no such thing as column 11. So we now have the right content on the right place. And then finally, we will put the footer line. Okay, the footer line will start at row 10, okay, and column 3, not column 4. Okay. So we start it at row 10, okay, and column 3, okay, and we'll end at row 10 and column 11. Okay. Now, if we will force it at row 11, it will become, it will go beyond, okay, uh, the size of the main container because it will be the bottom end of row 10 by then. So let's save this and refresh. And now we are able to locate the footer line. Remember, the footer line starts at the top of row 10 and ends at the top of row 11, rather column 11. Or rather the right side, left side of column 11. So we are able to locate our panels correctly. Now before I end, I'd like to apply the properties margin and padding, okay, particularly to the main content. Okay, let's put first margin left of 20 pixels and a margin right, or rather a margin top of 30 pixels. What will happen? A margin is a space. When we say margin left, there will be a space to the left, which is 20 pixels. And when we say margin top, we will have a 30 pixels space at the top. Let us refresh that. Take note that we have 30 pixels at the top and 20 pixels to the left. And it is a different color because it is outside the border of the main content. Okay. Now, to illustrate the point, let us change the margin back to padding. Okay. What will happen if we change this to padding? Okay, and refresh it. Take note that we had the same space, but this time, no, the space is inside the border. So that illustrates the difference between a padding and a margin. Okay, a padding is a space outside the border, while rather a margin is a space outside the border, and a padding is a space that is inside the border. Okay, I hope my point is clear, no? So grids are important because they can be used to properly lay out components of your web page so that you will be able to locate them properly. And headings are margins can be used to adjust the position of divs, by adjusting them spaces either outside or inside the border. Thanks for watching, and in the next video I'm going to illustrate another layouting tool called Flex. See you in the next video.